Hello, welcome. I'm Margaret Schuss.
And I am Brandon Tessers, as always, doing last minute prep. Hello, welcome. There I am. Hello, welcome to the This Is Not Therapy Hour. We are both licensed therapists, but this is not therapy for very many reasons. I'm going to sit down.
Yeah.
Waiting for my tea water to finish getting ready, but I'll just stand up. This is just an open conversation. Margaret and I are here talking with one another and with all of you. Without any more information to go on, we're just doing our best to make our guesses about who you are and what you're interested in and how you're interpreting us and how we're impacting you. For those of you who are willing and able, we appreciate people participating in the chat because it gives us more information about all of that. Please don't hesitate to jump into the chat. Don't worry about whether you're on topic with what we're discussing, or it's just a conversation like any other, and we're just talking about whatever we're talking about until and unless we talk about something else.
Yeah.
We work with a private therapy practice called Effective Artistry. Our physical office is located in Northbrook, Illinois. We do individual, couples, family, and group therapy with people in the state of Illinois and Wisconsin, the states of Illinois and Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. We also work with some coaches who can work with clients all over the world via the internet. All of them are executive functioning coaches, but they all have their additional specialties, whether that's business, professional coaching, parenting coaching, creative arts coaching.
Did you say the part about the different streaming services and how you can only see the comments that are on the specific? Oh, I could just say it. So we stream on multiple different platforms, but you will only see the comments that are on the platform that you are on. But we always try our best to read them out aloud and answer them.
Yeah, keep us all on the same page. I think that
is it now.
All right.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right.
It's good to have you back.
I'm all right. I know.
We missed you last week.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot of personal stuff going on, but I'm happy to be back. I was talking with Ozzy earlier. We went for like a walk and about how, and again, always, what do I say this? It's always different depending on the person and everything. But for me, I realized that like whenever I'm going through a hard time, like, yes, it's good to like take some time off and to like recoup. But then I also feel like the longer that I like don't do the stream or don't see my clients or do that, it just makes me take that much longer to like get back into the groove of things, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, this is something that comes up in my work and conversations with people all the time, is that it is obviously and very much definitely true that some of the times that we're struggling, that stepping back, doing less. And by doing less, what I really mean is like engaging in activities that we enjoy or find to be restful more helps. In many cases, is like a requirement in order for the problem to get better. In a lot of cases, helps. There's this unfortunate thing though, where because our culture doesn't really emphasize that, we talk about and teach everybody about as a culture first, like how pushing yourself and working hard and going through, which again, there's good reason to do that. There is benefit to those things, and those things don't happen naturally. We have to teach people the parts, the body impulses happen automatically, like thought we have to teach, but it leads to this like overestimation of that. And so everybody then thinks like it's always better to push harder and sacrifice for the future. So we have to teach people that like, no, it's important to step back. And at first people usually encounter that narrative because they're suffering from difficulties that are a result of pushing too hard and not doing enough restful and enjoyable things. And so making that shift is very helpful.
Right.
Unfortunately, though, that then often creates a new like overestimated narrative of like, oh, whenever I'm struggling, I need to do more enjoyable and restful things and not like push or try to do productive things. But there are problems that are made worse by that.
Right. And I guess going along with that, I feel like it also depends like on your job and if you actually enjoy it, because I feel like when I was working at retail jobs in the past, taking off time from that job was helpful. Like the longer the better sometimes at that point, because it was just too much. Whereas with this job, it's like I think I still have that mentality of like, oh, I'm doing too much, like I have to like take like a step back. But then it's like when I love my job and I'm less in my head and less anxious when I'm engaging with clients, the longer I don't do that makes it worse. It's like I still have that like thought of like things are going really rough right now. I need to take a step back. Like I still think like work means, oh, like how do I say it? Like not enjoyable, but it is enjoyable for me now.
Yeah, which is great. And very much I agree with you about that. Like
spilled tea everywhere. It's fine. Go ahead.
Because whether or not, or the extent to which something is enjoyable certainly changes, like in what ways it can be helpful or not for somebody. But it is also true that that first thing that our culture teaches, it's way over exaggerated, but there's truth to it too, that there is inherent benefit to things that are not pleasant or enjoyable or feel good in the moment but pay off later. And of course that like there's all kinds of problems and vulnerabilities there, because what if you are making sacrifices and doing something that's unpleasant and difficult and it doesn't pay off later?
Right.
And that happens, and people often are, well, I guess all of us to at least some extent at some point we're paying a cost that doesn't return the value that we're hoping for. Right. And realizing that can be very useful, but then overgeneralizing that into saying that it's never worth doing that creates a different set of problems. You know, like if you got too much going on, you're overwhelmed and anxious and exhausted. If you've got not enough going on, you're bored or antsy or listless.
Right, which can mimic the same thing a lot of times, at least for me.
Yeah, it's the same as like if you haven't eaten enough food, you're hungry. If you've eaten too much food, you're full. You go too far in either direction, and we have sensations and responses built in. They're like, oh, too far.
Right.
It's inherently unpleasant because, as with everything, like the optimal space is this window in between. Too little is a problem. Too much is a problem. There's literally like nothing. I mean, water. Too much water is a problem. Too little water is a problem. So that's why we have these evolved responses to things that, you know, the better we're doing in that window, the better we feel, and so it can be enjoyable or pleasant.
Right.
And the further we get out of that window, the worse it feels. And so you want to be able to differentiate between the signals that are like, this is the kind of unpleasantness that comes from this going too far this direction versus too far this direction.
That all makes sense, and I think you think that would make me feel better in theory, but it's also like such like a guess and check of what's too much, what's too little, and it's like I don't even that can get overwhelming.
Yeah, well, that's the key, is to be able to respond to the signals.
I want to practice my reading because I can't. Every time I try to read a comment, I can't read because I think I need glasses. It's fine. Super enraged with work, along
engaged.
Again, see, super engaged with work, along with increasingly intense exercise and focused nutrition plan that requires a great deal of attention. It became too much last week, so I shut down for a day. Building plan to shut down today into my plan. When it's needed, it's needed.
Yeah, I like all of that, and as we talk about all the time, what matters is utility, not accuracy, right? That there's no such thing as saying something the right way.
Can you go over that again? Utility versus accuracy.
Meaning that what matters is the impact something has, not a conceptual idea about whether it is correct or incorrect. That if you use bad logic and arrive at a useful conclusion, great. And if you use good logic and arrive at a harmful conclusion, dang it. You know? I also will point out, I think the thing you might be remembering is when I usually do it with a pen, but that I can describe this in any kind of way. I can say it's a Rubik's Cube. I can call it a fidget. I can call it a plastic toy. I can call it a colorful little object. All of those are accurate ways to describe that. The accuracy of any one way of describing it does not detract from the accuracy of any other. So I'm trying to point out that it's not about right or wrong or correct or incorrect. We're just talking about accuracy, and there's multiple. But if I need a fidget and I think of this as a fidget, I'm good.
Right. There was something I wanted to say in the comment with the building plan shutdown today into my building a plan shutdown today into my plan. I love that. And I don't know, that's something I've been trying to implement, I guess, but I like how this is worded, because mine's just like, okay, I'm just going to have an hour where like, I'm just really, really anxious. And like, I don't know, to me, like being like, okay, this hour, that's when I'm going to worry about everything. But then I'm just waiting for that hour and just getting anxious about that hour. So I don't know. I like the planning like a shutdown today and just being like, okay, hour by hour at this time, I'm just kind of gonna let it all go and see what happens.
Yeah, that's great. And that exercise you're referencing, or I don't know, maybe exercise is not the right word. That intervention of like having planned anxiety time or whatever can be very helpful. And like anything, like how it impacts each individual person is going to change, but certainly it can be very helpful for people.
But again, what you said though too about, I don't know, maybe I'm connecting this weird, but when you're saying like it's either like sometimes too little or too much of something, even that can be in that weird way. Because I've been like, okay, I'm going to have like a worry hour, and then it's like 20 minutes into the worry hour, I'm freaking out. I'm like, this is too much. Like I should not have an hour where I need to like overthink it.
Well, usually I've never heard anyone recommend that with an hour. When I've ever heard it, it's been 15 minutes. Do it for 15 minutes.
Someone was planning my failure then, because I was told an hour and it was not good.
Yeah, well, that seems like too long. But again, different people are different and works for different people. Maybe their experience of being anxious is different than your experience of it.
For me, it has become 2 days off weekly versus 1 day off.
So this is all good. All of these things that we're talking about are good. And then I want to talk about like, I know we've referenced this before, but it's like if someone is driving their car and it's working great and there's no problem, and then they're like, tell you in some way, indicate to you that they don't believe that there's any such thing as oil or that matters, then what can be happening is still great and no problem. But now there's this other thing where like, oh, but this is going to cause a problem for you later. I'm pretty confident. So this is one of those things. Everything here that's being said is great. And I hesitate to say anything that obviously I'm trying to make it so that it doesn't get interpreted as me saying there's a problem or what you're doing is bad, because that's not the case. But it is indicative of an underlying idea that can be problematic, which I would phrase as this idea that there's doing things and not doing things.
Okay.
That, anybody, me, you, anybody, if you're like, hey, what'd you do yesterday? One of the things that we might say is like, oh, nothing. And obviously in literal terms, that's never true, right? If nothing else, existing is the thing you're doing. Laying in bed is a thing you're doing, whatever. Right. But in practical terms, it's not useful, right? When someone's saying, what did you do? You can't actually say like everything you did for every moment of the day. So we filter through for like, what is the relevant or useful stuff to share with this person? And if we don't think that there's anything useful to share with that person, then yeah, it's useful to be like, oh, nothing. Just meaning like nothing worth discussing or nothing of interest or whatever. Unfortunately, there is also this idea that like some things count as something and some things count as nothing. That's even the way we've been talking today. I've tried to be clear about saying doing enjoyable or restful things instead of doing nothing. Because of course, especially anything that we can identify as tired, of course, there's going to be like, well, do less stuff.
Right.
That's not possible. You can't do less things, but you can do things that require less of this kind of energy or less taxing in that way or whatever. So we want to look at the qualities of what we're doing. So even things like calling it a day off, which is not a problem in and of itself. It's a useful concept. And I know that what you're referencing there is, here's my plan for whether it's working out or whatever it's doing. And I have 2 days where I don't do that plan. But by calling it a day off, we're referencing it as like, the point of that day is that I don't do anything.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that you think of it that way, because I doubt that you do. But what this premise that we're playing into, this idea, it's also the kind of stuff that counts as something is very often what people are referring to when they say productive. And they're like, I should be more productive. Whatever list they would give of what are things that count as being productive is the same list that they would give if you're like, what things are like things that you do?
Right.
And anything that's nothing is stuff that's not on the productive list. And so you want to look at like the value of those things. This is not just about a day off, but any concept of a break or a rest.
Okay. And you're saying finding the value in those?
Finding what it is that you are doing in those. Or at least if you don't, it's not that you need to know that. It's not very helpful or important to know that. But to know that there is utility in it and that there's something you're doing. And to get that understanding, the easiest way to get there is to just identify what is it that you're doing a bunch of times until you get to the point where you're like, yeah, it's something.
Right.
I don't need to name it.
I know I have like an intrusive thought I need to say right now.
Yeah.
It's on the subject, but I need to give. I wish my mom was watching this. I'll have her watch it later so you can hear my shout out. But when you were just saying this, something just clicked in my mind of how when I was like younger growing up, like between like 5 and 10, honestly, like I would always like I did nothing. Like I always had such a fear of failure, even at like 5 years old. And I was like, I didn't do anything and this is awful. And my mom would always say, like when you said this, it was weird. She was like, Margaret, you did not do anything. Like you tell me what you did. You got up, you took a shower, you ate breakfast, and then after I named everything, she was like, don't you feel better? And I'm like, yeah. Like even just little things like that, because I was so quick to be like, I didn't do anything. And she was like, no, you did do something. I don't know, it just reminded me of it.
Yeah, a lot of this is like there are certain connotations that are like universal. And I guess I should say for like my experience of this is with English speakers. Not necessarily native English speakers, but fluent English speakers, because that's all I'm doing with this, right? So I couldn't identify how much of this comes from like underlying things in the language or whatever. But there are some things that are pretty much universal in that context of like higher numbers are better than lower numbers, even without having to state anything specifically about that. No matter what we're talking about, if there's no other context, it's like you can have 5 or 10. It's like 10.
Right.
10 sounds like the better, right? And so we don't want to try and change that, but if we identify that, we want to try and like work that into how we're talking about and thinking about things. So this is one of those things that it feels good to do something, to think of yourself as having done something or be doing something, and it feels bad to think of yourself as doing nothing. And what people will often then try to do is to make it so that it doesn't feel so bad by saying like, it's okay to do nothing, or more likely, as was even referenced there, I need to do nothing. Like, sure, it would be better to do something, but I can't.
Right.
So yeah, your mom there was tapping into that you wanted, it would feel better to you to think of yourself as having done something, and just calling your attention to that helps.
I always tell my mom, like, Mom, I think you primed me to like have this job at Effective Artistry. Like sometimes I'm like, how did this job fall in my lap? And just like, I don't know, I've noticed actually in the last like few weeks for some reason that like a lot of the things that you've taught me, people have taught me, my mom has tried to instill in me since I was like 5. And I'll tell her like, Brandon told me this, and she's like, I've been telling you that since you were like in 1st grade. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that.
That's great.
So, go Evelyn.
Yeah.
And I.
So.
Oh.
Go ahead.
I was gonna read the comment.
Yeah.
And I do think it's 2 days for nothing more than doodling or reading fiction. I think I'll even cut out TV on those days. Fluent speakers who don't have the masterful vocabulary that I thought I had.
Yeah, vocabulary is irrelevant, but I get the joke. That other one, the first comment though, I'm going to point this stuff out. And again, it's not me saying that what you're doing is bad, just drawing attention to how pervasive these things are. So phrasing it as nothing more than doodling or reading fiction, right? That those are things that are on the side of being like less or nothing or not very much, where other things would be more. And then I'll cut out TV on those days is an idea that there is something about watching TV that is bad, and doing less of it is better for you. So just the idea, whether it's TV or anything, cutting out X is the idea that doing that thing is in and of itself inherently detrimental.
Right.
Usually though, when people are talking about how it'd be good for me to cut out X, what we're actually saying is there's other stuff that I am not doing that I think would be beneficial for me to do, but we still talk about it often as cutting out X. Like that is like watching TV is a bad thing.
Right.
And then you're focused on that same thing. Like some things are good to do, some things are bad to do. Some things are something, some things are nothing.
Yeah.
And we should do as much of the something and as little of the nothing as possible. But nobody would say that like putting gas in your car was doing nothing, right?
Right.
You used the car, and in using the car, it used up the resource of gasoline that's finite, and it takes some to use it. You can only store so much. So then if you want to use it more, you got to go put some in. Anybody who was like, I'm trying to cut out putting gasoline into the car and just drive it. Like, no, that's not going to work.
Right.
Same deal here. Just because a person thinks that something that they're doing isn't useful or isn't important, or that they'd be better off without it. My best like thought experiment, metaphor, whatever for this is that same gross. Like imagine you're on the operating table and you're numb but conscious, and the surgeon like grabs some gross red thing and points it out to you and is like,
Mhm.
do you know what this is? You'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can take it out then? Like, nope. The fact that it exists is all the evidence that I need that like it should be there.
Mhm.
Unless I'm really certain, right? There is an appendix in there that you can take out and it doesn't matter, but I got to be really sure about what the appendix is and what it does.
Right.
If I don't know what it is, or even if I do know what it is, like reading TV, but I don't know what it's doing, I'm not going to try and cut that out. The fact that it exists is strong evidence to me that it probably should exist unless I understand better how to make sure that, like, okay, if we have to take it out, what do I got to replace?
Right.
What function was it serving? Right. This idea, I'll often talk about it as like the abstinence approach, that culturally we have this idea that if things are going in any way differently than you would want them to go, that is the result of the presence of something bad.
Mhm.
You're doing something bad, or somebody's doing something bad, or something exists that is broken and deficient in some way. Right.
Okay.
And so that if you want things to go better, what you have to do is identify the bad thing and eliminate it.
Okay.
Abstain from it. That's
Right.
abstinence approach. As opposed to the idea that, like, at least sometimes everyone can acknowledge intellectually that at least sometimes you're not doing anything bad, nobody's doing anything bad, and it still isn't going the way that you want it. And if you want it to go the way you want, you have to identify something helpful which isn't happening and add that in.
Okay. Yeah.
But we don't really go there. We go for what's the bad thing that I got to stop doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's almost always going to make things worse.
Yeah.
Usually because you can't even eliminate it in the first place. You've identified, like, because there is a function that it's serving, you identify that it's the reason bad stuff's happening and that you should stop it, but then you don't actually stop it. Or even if you do, like, meaningfully cut back on it to some extent, it's for a limited period of time. So things go bad again and you just come back to the same answer. Well, it's that thing and I got to stop it. And
Right.
you don't. And then you just get on to, like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not stopping this thing? How, you know, and you stop exploring any other avenues of, like, what else could change that might help.
Right.
But also, even if you do get yourself to stop it, it is serving some function. And that doesn't mean that, like, there's going to be a disaster, because you could automatically start engaging with other things or doing things that kind of, you know, either eliminate the need for that function or serve that function too.
But then if it does serve, like, whatever function it does, I think I just answered my question. I'm still going to say it though. If you notice something that, I just lost it. What was I just saying?
If you identify something that does serve a function.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. When you identify something, like, whatever it serves, then isn't it good to just be like, okay, like, this gives me, I don't know, smoking cigarettes gives me energy. Let me replace it with something else.
If you want to change, if there is a behavior that you want to stop, all right, let me change this to accomplishment equation language, because that makes this easier.
I'm good with that.
So what we're saying when we say it serves a function, we're talking about it has a value. There's some impact of doing the thing that is beneficial in some way. And then everything has a cost. There are some things where the value it has is greater than the cost. Or there are some things where we think of the cost as being greater than the value. Because if we're doing something repeatedly, we do, all of us will do things that we think, you know, we have, whether it's conscious or not, like, we're behaving as though it will be worth the cost, but we're wrong all the time. So we have experiences where something goes differently. But if you repeat it over and over, more than, like, humans adapt very quickly. If you do the same thing more than once or twice and you still think that's not worth the cost I'm paying, that's more downside than upside, then that's just a misunderstanding on your part. There's something there. So let's take cigarettes as an example, where by the time I have identified that I want to quit, right? I can still be aware that, like, oh, it's so satisfying, or, you know, it helps calm me down, or whatever. I can see the value in it. I can think even, like, oh, it's cool, or it's fun, or it's whatever, like I did when I started. But I'm also now aware of, like, well, here's all the downsides of it. And so I'm thinking of it as, well, the cost I'm paying is not worth all that. And yet I'm still doing it anyway.
Right.
All that means is that we are not thinking about satisfying the cravings as being additional value. We're still evaluating it as though I didn't have the cravings that I have right now. Where basically, like, when I first started smoking, if I knew then what I know now, I would be like, that's not worth it.
Right.
But if we're continuing to do it, it is still up here. We're just not thinking of it that way.
Okay, that makes sense.
So anyway, what we want to do then is, if there's something that we're doing repeatedly where we're like, this is not a good thing, I should try and cut this back or stop it for whatever reason, then yes, we have to either find something else that provides this value, even if that means that we've got to identify, well, there's like 12 different things that this does for me, and I got to separate that out into like 12 different replacements and whatever. But in large scale terms, what we're saying is we find a different way to get the value, but at a lower cost. It's always preferable to get the same value, but at a lower cost. Either that, or we change things so that the value drops.
Okay.
So, for example, if I no longer had the craving, then the value would be down where I think it is, and then I would stop doing
Right.
it. You know, like if you didn't have the craving, you wouldn't smoke the cigarette, probably. So that's what we're talking about, is that if you're doing something, the value's worth the cost. That doesn't mean that it's optimal. There are cases in which other options that cost less would be better, or other options that cost the same would provide more value. You know, would give you that plus other stuff too. So yeah, when we want to look at changing, like there's something I'm doing that I think is bad, I want to do less of it, we got to look at the magic word for therapists is instead. What do you want to be doing instead? I don't want to be fighting with my mom all the time. How would you like to be interacting with your mom instead?
Right.
I don't want to be depressed anymore. What would you like to feel instead? It's not a matter of like morality. It's just the mechanism of how cognition works and how humans are constructed. Is we pursue things. We don't flee from things. Conceptually, obviously in real life, we run away from things. But like, I don't retreat from depression. I pursue happiness or joy or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that plays into this underlying thing of like, well, if I'm struggling, it's because I'm doing too much stuff and I need to retreat from that stuff. That's the bad stuff, or the extent to which I'm doing it is too much and I need to retreat. But there are some versions of feeling bad. Like let's say bored as a simple example, where doing quote unquote less stuff is going to make you feel more bored.
Right.
Loneliness, right? I'm feeling lonely. The less you interact with other people, the more lonely you're going to feel.
Right. That makes sense.
But if we don't identify that as loneliness, if we identify it as like, I'm just overwhelmed and tired and drained. And then I think, well, interacting with people is a draining thing, so I'll do that less. Yeah. And that way I'll be less drained. But then I do that and it gets worse. That's a good indication that like the way you've conceptualized it is not accurate, or at least not useful. Yeah. But like anything where you come up with a theory of like, I'm going to try to do this and I think that'll make it better. And you do it and the problem gets worse. You should probably reevaluate rather than be like, no, I got to do this even more. Right. Obviously, there are exceptions to that. There are things where like doubling down on it can make it work better or whatever. But as a general rule, if you do it and things are worse, not even just not resolved yet, but like worse, the problem that you're trying to solve itself is worse, then you probably want to back up and be like, let me come up with a different idea instead of just doing more of it.
No, I don't know. I'm like looking deep in my thoughts right now, just because I'm like, wow, I do that a lot. I'm just like, I think I'm very that person that's like, nope, it's 100% this. I know it is this. And then I do all of these things and it makes it worse. And then instead of, again, practicing what I preach and reevaluating what I'm thinking it is, I'm just like, no, like I have to keep doing it. It just like brings it further and further. I guess, how do you get out of that loop?
Well, in the specifics we're talking about today, the first step is getting better at identifying, is this the problem, the kind of problem that results from not doing enough of something, or the kind of problem that results from doing too much of something. The fact that we as a culture tend to call everything tiredness is a big part of the problem here. Follow up to Brandon's help last week. My married adult daughter who refuses psych help was willingly admitted to a mental health facility Saturday night, relieved that she's getting care. You're suggesting to try and understand what she's thinking. Empathy, always possible to change what's happening, proved invaluable. Well, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that things have moved in a better direction. That's really happy, of course, to have been able to do anything that might have been useful in that. But regardless, I'm glad to hear. I appreciate the follow-up. I'm glad to hear that things are moving in a good direction.
Well, that is really great to hear.
That's wonderful, yeah. I guess that conversation that we had last week was similar, or at least had some things in common with what we're talking about right here, where like sometimes problems happen as a result of doing too much of something, and by doubling down and doing too much, you're doing even more, the problem gets worse. But by doing something else instead, where we could conceptualize as backing off of it, things can unlock and go in a better direction.
Yeah.
But same the other way too, right? That in my mind, I actually do think that there's this like anxiety to depression pipeline in our culture, or maybe call it burnout to depression pipeline, where again, this is like an overarching, like the mechanism of it is that we, of course, as we should, teach children. We were taught as children, and we all like culturally participate in narratives and teaching of children that like it is important to override impulses for long-term gain, right? Your impulse is to hit that person, don't hit, it's not good to hit, right? And we don't necessarily like explain that all to kids about like, well, if you hit people, they have less of reason to associate with you and you'll be more alone about, and it doesn't need to be all that, but sometimes we do explain it in that way. But mostly we just say like, it's bad.
Yeah.
Is the placeholder, instead of explaining like, don't play by that cliff because if you do, you could fall off and die. It's like, don't play by the cliff. That's off limits. It's bad to do that. And that's really great because consciousness is not like automatic, thoughts and reason, being able to conceptualize what's going to happen later or tomorrow or a year from now, and how will what I do in this moment impact that. That doesn't happen automatically. So we have to teach that.
Yeah.
But because we're teaching that, we're historically and culturally speaking, we're not really doing a lot of like, and balance that out with like your impulses also happen for reasons. And like they're also useful information, especially because most of the time we're only talking about it when someone has done something detrimental,
right?
Not usually when they have failed to do something beneficial, but you did something bad. That's why we're talking about it. Don't hit, whatever.
Yeah.
There's been certainly individuals, but also even culturally, there's been at least some shift on that where we're trying to do more about here are good things to do, beneficial things to do that we're talking about, not just what not to do. Anyway, so because we get all these narratives and messages and interactions based around like, hey, don't do that thing you have the impulse to do because it's bad. We overgeneralize, and then we start to think that like anything bad that happens is probably because I did something bad and impulsive and I need to identify and stop that thing. Which again, useful, but do it too much. And you can, not everybody, but like you can end up in a position where you're ignoring all these you're getting signs about exhaustion and injury and all these danger, like this, don't keep doing this. But you're like, no, impulses are bad, whatever. I gotta like, it's important for this reason, that reason, you push and push. And then you get injured.
Right.
You push too hard and don't rest enough and you get injured. And then when you get injured, you learn like, oh, that happened because I pushed too hard and didn't rest enough. So now anytime in the future that you're feeling any impulse, anything that you're like, oh, this hurts, or you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't listen to that enough in the past. And I need to do a better job of listening to it now and scale back what I'm doing. One of the issues there, though, is that the whole point of this, like the reason that happens, or not the reason, one of the things that is true of people for whom that happens is that you haven't been paying very close attention to the impulses that your body is sending you, whether that's physical or emotional or whatever. And so you don't have a great framework, you don't have a lot of skill or experience in sussing out the difference between this impulse means this thing, or this sensation means this thing. It's just bad. I don't like it. It's bad and unpleasant. And so now you interpret all unpleasant stuff as being solved by the same thing, which is to do less, which some unpleasant stuff is solved by that. Some unpleasant stuff gets worse when you do that.
Right.
So this anxiety to depression pipeline thing that this is the first time I've ever like said that phrase out loud, but that there's a lot, it's a fairly common thing I see for people to go from this, like, I'm always behind, I'm always feeling guilty about not doing enough and pushing myself to do more and more and more. And then everything falls apart. And then at some point after that, I'm like, I don't understand why I feel so bad. Like an incredibly common thing for me to hear from people who are feeling depressed or struggling with depression is like, I don't understand why I'm so tired. I didn't do anything. Like all I do all day is rest and I still am so exhausted. Is to me a result of that unless there's medical stuff involved, which there
Right.
sometimes is. Otherwise, as a result of this conceptual thing, this idea that like any unpleasantness is the result of being tired, and therefore any unpleasant experience is tiredness, and that the solution to that is to quote unquote do nothing or rest.
Right.
And so then I rest, but it still exists or even gets worse. It's like, what the hell? One of the big issues there is that thinking falls into the nothing category culturally. Like if all you did yesterday was sit in a chair and think all day, then you're like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So that's part of the whole thinking doesn't cost anything. Thinking is free.
Okay.
So I'll sit and I'll think all day long and then be tired and be like, why am I tired?
Yeah.
But that's not just about thinking. That's all the things we think of as nothing. Like watching TV takes energy, and doodling or reading fiction takes, these are active things that you're doing.
So can you go back though, like one the example you have with someone who is like who has depression, and they're like sleeping all day, resting all day, and they still feel tired with medical things not being a part of it. Why is that happening then? Because they're
Well, each individual context, there's always individual things, so I can't say like across the board, but it certainly is useful to think, to investigate as like a framework to make some, like, it's worth checking this out, is how much is that person thinking, and how much does that person think that thinking should impact how tired one is.
Right.
Like anytime someone says, I can't even get myself to brush my teeth or take a shower, which is a real thing that happens. And in no way is it the result of a person not wanting to do those things.
But they're just thinking so much about it that they don't do it sometimes.
Well, let's say this. If a person says that, that's a result of they have thought about it, right?
Right.
Like no one's never thought about whether they brush their teeth or not and then said like, I can't get myself to brush. It means I've been having experiences where I think about it and I think it would be good to do and I should do it and I try to get myself to do it and then I don't do it. So we would want to look at like what's going on there, but I can say some general things. In addition to whatever is happening that's making it so that they're not following through on this intention or this idea that they have. In addition to that, they are also spending resources on the thinking and trying to get themselves to do it part.
Right.
Like if there's
Isn't
something.
that what I said?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
If there's something that you think you should do, that you think of yourself as being a failure if you don't do it, and you don't do it, how do you feel?
Awful.
Right. So to talk about the feeling awful, what we could call in this moment depression, right? That's not everything we mean by the word, but in this case, like there's something I think is really important to do, and if you don't do it, it's bad. And it's even worse if you're like the kind of person or you're in the kind of place where you can't do it. Then of course you feel bad about not doing it. To then say that the reason that you're not doing it is because you feel bad about not doing it, the depression is what makes me not do it, is not to say that that could never be a useful way to describe it, but it's by and large not going to be a useful way to describe it. It's like hold on, I was going to use an example that now I got to clarify because as soon as I was about to say it, I thought, oh, this might give the wrong impression. I am not trying to say in any way that people make themselves depressed, but this is the first metaphor that popped into my head. It's like if I were to like stab myself in the leg and then be like, why did I stab myself in the leg? Well, it's because of how much my leg hurts. Like if it happened as a result of the action, it can't be the reason that the action took place.
That makes sense.
And no, people don't make themselves depressed, except in the sense that like we generate those senses ourselves, right? Like feeling bad, feeling pain. Pain is not it's not like sound or light or whatever, where there's a detectable environmental thing. Pain is a sensation that our body generates in response to some stimuli. Well, if your body's generating it, as with anything, that means your body is using resources in order to generate it.
Right.
You can't make it for free. So feeling pain is unpleasant and also costly because you're doing it. That's the same with all emotions, pleasant or unpleasant ones. Your systems are both generating and observing and interpreting that sensation. So feeling anything takes resources.
Okay.
And the more you're feeling something, the more resources it's taking. If you're feeling unpleasant stuff, it's also unpleasant in addition to the cost that it takes to generate it.
Yeah.
which has its own set of things too. But so yes, in that sense, which is another one of the things that people will be like, I don't understand why I'm so exhausted. Well, feeling sad takes energy. Like literally, if you're feeling very sad, your body is expending resources to generate that sensation.
I'm going to use the sadness example. No, that makes sense. But then my thing is like, okay, if you're constantly thinking about how you're sad and all that, yes, I get it takes up energy. But then let's say you stop thinking about how sad you are and do something else. Isn't that still expending energy?
Yeah.
But
what would hopefully or theoretically change if we're doing this with somebody is that they now understand why they're tired.
Right.
Because that's something they think of as taking energy.
As soon as I ask it, before you say it, it comes to my mind and I'm like, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Because a lot of this really, again, not always, whatever, but a lot of this is impacted by people's understandings or beliefs of whether they should feel what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm more tired than I think I should be, I'm like, ooh, that's a problem. Something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm really tired, but I'm like, well, yeah, of course I'm tired, then I'm responding to the tiredness as an issue, like I should rest, whatever, but not like what's wrong with me.
Right.
So you can change somebody's idea about whether what they're feeling is justified and how they respond changes.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
Some of that I would say also has to do with the cognitive focus that our culture has, but also some individuals have much more than others, where like, let's take brushing teeth.
Mm-hmm.
No amount of thinking about brushing teeth results in you brushing your teeth.
Right.
The only thing that results in your teeth getting brushed is like the physical action of brushing teeth. And then obviously I know that like that's going to sound like a meaningless thing to point out. Everyone gets it, whatever. And the question everyone is talking about is, okay, but getting yourself to take those physical action,
right,
which people are then conceptualizing as it's about how you think.
Mm-hmm.
If you think in a certain way, you will take the actions. If you think in a different way, you won't take the actions.
Right.
Which is not true.
Okay.
It can be true, right? Like if I don't think something is worth doing, I'm not likely going to do it. Where if I think it is worth doing, I might. But there are all kinds of things that I think is worth doing and I don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about it more in that scenario does not make it happen more.
Right.
So back to the accomplishment equation. If I think the value in brushing my teeth is greater than the cost, then I should do it.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not doing it, it means that the cost is greater than the value, whether I think that it is or not.
Right.
Or it means that I can't afford the cost.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's the cost is greater than the value, if I think that's the issue, then I'm going to like, well, then I should think about it as more important.
Mm-hmm.
It's important in addition to like brushing my teeth. It's also a signal of whether I'm a valuable person or whether I'm depressed or not.
Yeah.
So that becomes more. But if I already was here, like doing that doesn't enable me to take the action because I still can't afford it. And it makes me worse off because increasing the value required some resources.
Right.
I didn't have enough resources to be able to do it. And then I spent some of the resources I do have just feeling worse about not doing it.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Well, I guess, can you give me like some, like, I know it's different depending on everyone, but like an example then of how to, like for the brushing teeth thing, I guess, for example, like what are things you can do? I know thinking about it constantly doesn't make you do it, but what are things you can do to decrease the decrease the cost? My bad. Yeah.
So there are some things, and I'll say some of that, but before that, I'll say that some of the issue here is in how these, like the fact that I'm referencing taking a shower and brushing your teeth is not a coincidence. Those are two specific actions that have been identified, not by every single person, but by people by and large, as like, obviously you can and should do that. And if a person isn't doing that, it's a sign that something is wrong.
Right.
It's also, these are two things that we've like identified that like, they're easy. They should be, they don't take time. You have whatever. So even though I'm going to answer your question, and I do this with clients sometimes too, like come up with ways to lower the cost. The bigger issue to talk about conceptually is the fact that we've invested that thing, whatever it is, in this case, brushing teeth, I've invested it with so much importance,
right,
that it means so much. No matter what I do to bring the cost down, I'm still going to be spending way more on the thinking about it than it is worth.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think of it as being super important. But anyway, some of it is environmental changes, right? Like, where do you put your toothbrush so that you see it or don't see it, and your toothpaste so that you see it and don't see it? Do you have toothpaste that tastes pleasant or unpleasant to
Mhm.
you. We can talk about routine stuff. I know one very common that I tend to stay away from, but not that I would never try it, would be things like set a reminder or
Mhm.
whatever to get yourself to do it. That I'm almost never going to do in this kind of scenario, because reminders, alarms, those kinds of things, lists, they help when part of what's getting in the way is that you forget.
Right.
You're not thinking about the thing.
Because if the cost is already lower, then it's easier to do it with the alarms and everything.
Well, if part of the reason that you're not doing it is because you forget to do it, then being reminded to do it can help you do it. But if you're already remembering, no alarm or reminder or whatever is going to change anything. Like, you're already aware of it.
Right. It can just make you feel worse.
Right.
That makes sense.
But it's advice that's given because, it makes the advice giver feel good about giving advice, even though it's not likely to do much in this case. And there are other cases where, like, even with brushing teeth, sometimes it is just like people forget to do it.
Right.
Or whatever. Also, like, social influence, which is another thing that's again one of the underlying problems with all this stuff, is this hyper individualism thing, this idea that, like, what I'm experiencing and what I'm doing is just a result of things that are true about me and nobody else has anything to do with it. But if that was the case, then nobody would be coming to me and talking to me about not showering or not brushing their teeth as a sign of how depressed they are. Like, people have talked about how that is a sign of depression. That's why you have the idea of it. So depending on the specifics, that can go a lot of different ways. But yeah, we can do something simple like body doubling kind of a thing, that someone's like, I'm going to brush my teeth. Come brush your teeth with me. Will that definitely work? No, not necessarily. But it's certainly more likely that you're going to brush your teeth if someone asks you to come do it with them than not. Of course, again, depends on the context, because in some cases that might make it worse. You might brush your teeth more, but you might feel even more depressed depending on the nature of that relationship with that person and how they perceive you and how you're worried about how they perceive you and what you think depression is. That could result in somebody being like, well, I'm such a piece of crap that I need my mom to tell me to brush my teeth, even though I'm 23 years old or whatever. So none of these are like one size fits all.
That's something, it's funny you said that. Just because that's something that me and my fiance do with, like, brushing our teeth. We do it at the exact same time, and it helps so much. But I guess that makes sense. Yeah, like, maybe if it wasn't with my fiance, if it was someone else, like, even if I'm doing it every night or something, being like, oh, I'm not doing this because could it also be like, I'm not doing this because I want to. I'm doing it because, like, someone is telling me I have to.
Yeah, that's another one of those thoughts that gets in people's heads. Like, here's a pretty much universally applicable one, that if you take anybody and convince them that the only reason they do anything is because other people want them to and not because they themselves want to, that's going to result in some difficulty for them. They're going to be like, oh man. And you can convince anybody of that.
Right.
There is because this is all conceptual stuff, it's just narratives. There is no meaningful categorical way to say, I'm doing this because I want to, not because of how I think it will impact other people. Because there's no, pick anything that you enjoy, like the thing that you love the most or theoretically would, want the most. And I say, okay, you can have that thing, but if you do, someone that you love dies, do you still want it the same amount? Like, no. Which is just a quick way to prove the point, but more deeply and philosophically, it's like, no, everything you want and everything you like is constructed on top of experiences you have had with other people, and interactions and messages. The things that you think are good and bad things to do are formed by what you hear and see other people tell you or what their experiences are. Enthusiasm grinds the time. Ooh, that sounds like a saying or something. Maybe it's not.
I'm going to adopt it though. I like it.
I am curious about it though.
Finds
the time. That one, that makes more sense. Because the other one, I was like, that seems different from what people usually
I like
say.
that.
Yes. So that's a great example of the kinds of things we're talking about, right? Where is it true that the more enthusiastic I am about something, the more likely I am to do it? Yes. In fact, specifically, I'd say that the major mechanism behind that is exactly what that saying is referring to. Meaning, if there's something that I really want, whether I'm enthusiastic about it, I think it's pleasurable, however you want to describe it. If there's something I really want, if I'm aware of that to some extent, I'm watching for opportunities, or think of it as like, I really want to buy this car, then like other purchasing decisions are made at least partially in mind of like, well, I want to put some money away.
Yeah.
Or like how I manage my money over time is done that way. Or if I come into $50,000 out of nowhere and I really want to buy the car, I might buy the car, right? So that I like that saying, and it's useful in that way. The problem though then is that it gets interpreted. Again, I'm not referring to this specific saying, although I think this is possible here, that statements like these get interpreted or logged in with this idea that there's an unspoken always there. Enthusiasm always finds the time. That if you are enthusiastic about something, you will make it happen.
Right.
And therefore, if you don't do something, it must mean that you are not enthusiastic about it. And that's not true. No matter how enthusiastic you are about the car, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. Right? If you don't care about the car, you'll never get it. That's true. Because this is a thing we're talking about that's optional. There are all kinds of things that are not, like, we can not enjoy it or not like intellectually care about it, but we still do it anyway, breathing or whatever, you know, like, but we're talking about something, a luxury, you know, something that it's nice to have it if you like it, but if you don't care about it, it doesn't impact your life to have it or not have it. Then yeah, if you don't care about it, you won't get it. If you do care about it, you might get it. The more you care about it, the more likely you are to get it, because when the opportunity arises, you'll think about it, and or you're doing things over time to build towards being able to do it. That wouldn't happen without the enthusiasm. But you can be enthusiastic and still never be able to do it.
And on the other opposite side, can't you just not be enthusiastic about something and still just do it?
Yes. The most useful language I have for this is like ancient Greek philosophy terms of hedonic joy and eudaimonic joy. Hedonic joy is the joy of experience, that like in and of itself, whatever is happening in that moment is pleasurable. The response I'm having, the experience of it that I'm having, I like it. Eudaimonic joy is the joy of meaning, that like the experience I'm having, I might not enjoy, but I've connected it via meaning to something that really I do like and care about. Sometimes that's like, it's getting me closer to a goal. Sometimes it's just, this represents something that's important to me. You know, doing charity work, you know, lifting these boxes isn't a pleasant, momentary, phenomenological experience, but it's important to me to like help other people, and this represents that. And so I feel joy, eudaimonic joy. And some things are both, and obviously many things are neither, but some things are one or the other, and it's useful to be able to differentiate. So what you're talking about when we say like there's all kinds of things we do that we're not enthusiastic about, those are things that have eudaimonic joy.
Yeah, the meaning. Okay.
Yes.
I'm saying this out loud so I remember.
Or sometimes it's not the presence of joy, but the understanding of the suffering that would occur if you don't do it. That like, you know, doing your job, some element of what your job is might be something that you're like, this in and of itself is not pleasant, but it is something that's meaningful to me, or it does at least, you know, I'll get my paycheck out of it, or as a result of it in part, or whatever. So you can be happy and feel that eudaimonic joy, but you can not be aware of any of that and still do it anyway. So you're not experiencing either hedonic joy or eudaimonic joy, but you are like, if I don't do it, I'll get fired, I'll be screwed. Right. You're doing it in order to avoid a bad outcome. And then of course, the vast majority of what we do with no conscious thinking or whatever at all. It's just an unconsidered response to stimuli. You don't breathe because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. You don't breathe because it's pleasant. You don't breathe because it's meaningful to you. It's just, you just do it. Right. And that's same with working your job or whatever. You just, for the most part, everything we do for the most part is just, it's time to start getting ready for work. We start getting ready for work. We're not having a thought about like, should I or should I not?
Right. Even though you're not having the thought about it, if it's just more mechanical, it still is falling in those two categories anyways. Two joy categories.
No, because those are, in this case, we're talking about joy, which is an experience that you have. So something could be beneficial, but not joyful, either in hedonic or eudaimonic, right? Like, and I can even think of it that way. Think like this is worth doing, it'll pay off or whatever, but not feel like the joy of like I'm accomplishing something or getting close to it.
That makes sense.
Usually if we're actively thinking about it, we we're going to feel some like satisfaction or pride or, you know, something that's pleasant, but not always. And again, most of the time we're just not actively thinking about it. We're just doing whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
So this is the thing, is like, all of these things are great things to say and can be very useful and helpful to people, often are very useful and helpful. And they can all cause problems when they're interpreted over broadly, or telling kids you can be anything you want to be is a great thing to say, because what you mean by that is like, don't take anything off the table.
Yeah.
You know, like anything you consider being in your life, you can pursue that thing. I don't want you to be like, I could be this, and be like, no, I can't, I got to stop. No, you could.
Right.
But it also understandably gets interpreted and built in as, therefore, if you want to do something, you will do it. And if you are not doing it, it means you don't want to. And the way to do it is to want it more.
Well, I didn't even think of that, but that.
Right.
Wow.
That's not what we're trying to say. Or don't worry about it. Don't worry about doing you know, like getting 100%. Just do
Try
your best.
Yeah.
And what we mean when we say that is like, I don't care about the results. You don't need to feel guilty or bad. Just give me whatever you've got. But it often then gets interpreted as like, whatever you give me, I'm going to evaluate you as though that thing you gave me is the best you were capable of.
Wow.
So it increases the pressure when we're trying to take it down. All these little things. And it's not that anybody who's saying them is wrong, because they're not. And if they get interpreted in the way that we intend, they're helpful.
Right.
And in fact, a lot of the time they do get interpreted that way and they are helpful. And then these other problems come around later on, and nobody, not even the person who is experiencing the problem, goes back and is like, oh, I wonder how much this was impacted by being told that I can accomplish anything I want. Except we do talk about this more and more. Like that specific one, if you hear anybody talking about former gifted kid syndrome or whatever, or golden child or whatever, that like so many people are like, boo-hoo, you're smart and whining about it, whatever. But that's an attempt to talk about this idea that like, I was told that I would never fail or whatever. Right. It's not that you were told you would never fail. It's that you were told that you could do anything you wanted. And then everybody has experiences that like, I want to do this thing and I didn't.
Yeah.
But if you genuinely believe that you do everything that you want or could do anything that you want, then you don't think like, I wanted it and still failed anyway. You're like, I guess I didn't really want it. What's wrong with me? I got to get myself to want this thing. And that can lead to like, I got to get myself to want to brush my teeth even.
Yeah.
I know.
My mind is blown away right now. I don't just like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I know we do need to wrap up.
Yeah, we got to wrap up. Yeah. I'll say this as the last thing and we'll wrap up, is people focus on the meaning of communication, which is obviously very important. Like, I'm saying something, do you understand what I mean? And that's great. Unfortunately, people will often stop there and think that only the meaning is what matters, that there's no other impact of saying or thinking about things in a certain way. As long as you know what I mean, we're fine here. But you can know what I mean in this moment. I can impact you in the way that I want in this moment. I can even know what I mean. That's the bigger problem. I can know what I mean in this moment. And then tomorrow or next week or a year from now, other problems pop up that weren't about the meaning.
Right.
And I just I'm not aware of the fact that anything matters besides that. But there's a difference. If you ask somebody how you're doing and they say not bad, or if they say I'm fine, or like same old, so, those all mean the same thing. But there's still different impacts that it has to say those different things.
Absolutely.
All right.
It's good to be with you all. I'm excited to see you next week.
Yeah, good to be with you all. We'll be back next week.